If you've spent enough time online, whether gaming, on social platforms, or in virtual worlds, you've probably made friends you never expected to have. You might have met through a shared love of a game, countless late-night Discord chats, or just by bumping into each other in a digital space. And sometimes, those friendships become as real and meaningful as any we have in the physical world. We share jokes, experiences, and even life struggles. We celebrate wins together, whether that's beating a tough raid boss, finishing a creative project, or just making it through a rough day. And then, sometimes without warning, someone disappears. Maybe they just moved on. Maybe they got busy. But sometimes, they're really gone. And that's when we realize something that isn't talked about nearly enough: grief in digital spaces. It's an odd, uniquely modern kind of loss. When a friend passes away in real life, we expect to hear about it through family or mutual friends. But online, it's different. One day, their messages just stop. Their last login sits frozen in time. And often we don't know what happened or if we'll ever find out. And yet, that loss is real. Even if you've never met them face to face, their absence is felt. Because digital friendships aren't lesser, they're just different. In gaming, people hold tribute matches. On social media, friends leave messages on profiles that haven't been touched in years. And in virtual worlds, entire memorials are built. Every community has its way of remembering, but the one thing that remains the same: the grief is real. So today, we're talking about something that affects anyone who's ever formed real friendships in an online space. How do we cope when a digital friend disappears? How do different communities handle it? And how can we make sure the people we care about online aren't left wondering if the same ever happens to us? Are online friendships real? Let's set the record straight. Now, before we go any further, I know there are people out there who hear online friend and immediately roll their eyes. Come on, they're not real friends. You've never even met them. What actually makes a friendship real? Is it sharing experiences? Trust? Laughing over inside jokes? Supporting each other through tough times? Because if that's the case, then online friendships check every single box. The truth is, for many people, their online friendships are more real than the relationships they have in their daily lives. Because in digital spaces, people connect based on shared interests, not just convenience. It's not about who happens to live nearby or work in the same office. It's about who truly gets you. For some, virtual friendships are a lifeline. Whether due to illness, disability, social anxiety, or simply circumstance, not everyone has a built-in support system in their physical world. And when you lose an online friend, the grief is real. But here's the hard part. Sometimes there's no one in your offline life who understands. If you tell someone, "I lost a friend," they'll probably offer condolences. But if you say, "I lost a friend I met online," you might get a blank stare, or worse, a dismissive, "Oh, well, that's not the same." And that's the problem. Digital grief can be isolating. There's often no funeral, no formal way to mourn, no real-life friends who knew the person you lost. You grieve alone. That's why this conversation matters. Because for those of us who have experienced this kind of loss, we know it's just as real as any other. And people shouldn't have to navigate that grief alone. It's funny how the internet started as this thing people used for information. And now, for so many of us, it's where we find some of our strongest connections. Some of my longest friendships have come from digital spaces. Destiny 2, for example, isn't just a game I've played for 10 plus years. It's where I met an entire group of friends I might never have crossed paths with otherwise. Friends from different time zones, different walks of life, but connected by a shared love for the game. We've been through everything together: frustrating raids, hilarious fails, and deep late-night talks. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the bond between people who've spent hours trying and failing to beat the same boss. Plurk was another unexpected source of lifelong connections. If you don't know Plurk, it is like a mix of Twitter and old-school internet forums, where conversations can stretch out over days. I met people there who became part of my everyday life. Some of them led me back to Second Life, where friendships became even deeper. Plurk is also the place where I found love. What started as a close friendship with my best online buddy eventually turned into a long-distance relationship, and for 2 years, I traveled back and forth between Australia and New Jersey to be with him. It wasn't planned, and in the end, it financially ruined us. But for those 2 years, it was our reality. And beyond the relationship itself, Plurk gave me something I had always dreamed of: a reason to finally travel to the USA. That trip turned into a full-blown adventure, touring the country to meet some of my Plurk friends. When I got back home, I was completely exhausted, but what a blast it had been. Many of those friends? I still talk to them to this day. That journey didn't just stop there. Through Plurk, I also met one of my closest friends, someone who remains a part of my life even now. We stayed connected for years, and when I was in London, we finally met in person. It's incredible how friendships that start with just a few online conversations can turn into something so much bigger. Here's the thing about these spaces. They bring people together because of shared interests, shared humor, and shared experiences. There's no small talk about the weather or forced office chatter. Instead, you jump straight into the things that actually matter to you. Online friendships don't just apply to people like me, who've been on platforms like Second Life or Plurk for years. They're how a lot of people connect these days. My son Anthony, for example, isn't the most sociable person in the real world. But online, he thrives. Gaming is his social life. It's where he builds friendships, teamwork, trust, even rivalries. We actually game together, and we're a solid team, though he does have way too much fun sniping me and his sister in Call of Duty. Amanda always talks trash, like she's better than him, and she's not. It's funny, but also real. That's where his community is. That's how he stays connected. And I've seen how much those friendships mean to him, especially when he lost 2 of his online friends within the same week. When he told me, it hit harder than I expected because I had talked to those boys. See, when I can't get a hold of Anthony and I see him in an Xbox party, I just invite myself in. No warning, no hesitation. Classic mum move. And usually when I do, I get the same reaction. Who are you? I'm Anthony's mum. Then suddenly, I'm part of the chat, talking games, having a laugh, hearing little bits of their lives until my son comes back from being AFK. These 2 boys, well, young men, really, were in their mid-20s, like Anthony. They were fun, respectful, full of banter, just genuinely good people. So when Anthony told me a month later that one of them had died by suicide and the other had relapsed and died from an overdose, I was stunned. He'd known they were struggling. He knew their stories, but he really believed they were doing better, that they were on the mend, that they had it under control. To this day, I don't actually know how he found out. It's still so recent that I haven't asked, and I probably won't. He carries a lot inward, and I know this shook him. But he also knows he can tell me, because I get it. I understand online friendships. I know that the grief he's feeling is real, and he knows I won't brush it off or say they weren't real friends, because they were. And that's what makes this conversation so important for people like Anthony, and honestly, for people like me too. One of the most powerful things about online friendships is how easy it can be to open up. Sometimes people share more with their online friends than they do with the people in their physical world. There's a kind of freedom in being behind a screen. It's not about pretending to be someone else, but about feeling safe enough to be yourself. I've had friends confide in me about things they couldn't tell their families. I've been there for people during tough times, just as they've been there for me. And when that happens, it doesn't matter if you've ever been in the same room because the bond is real. That's why, when an online friend disappears, it leaves a hole. It's not just losing a name on a screen, it's losing the person behind it. And sometimes, it's not just a long break, it's the end, and you never see it coming. Maybe it's someone you used to game with every night, someone who was always the first to log in, or that one friend who could carry an entire conversation with memes alone. And then, one day, gone. No warning, no explanation, just silence. Maybe they got busy, maybe they rage quit life and moved to a farm with no internet, or maybe something worse. And the worst part? You never know. And that's what makes it so hard, because in the digital world, there's no set way to process that loss. Some communities have found ways to honor their friends, while others are left with nothing but silence. Take my friend Ancient Wisp on Xbox. The guy was 80 years old, played Destiny 2 with an oxygen tank next to him, and had coughing fits so intense we sometimes paused mid-raid, half expecting his mic to go dead. And then, one day, he stopped logging in. No updates, no final message. Just his last seen status, frozen in time. Now, logically, we could assume the worst. But assume is all we can do, because no one ever updated his profile. No family member reached out. Not that I expect Xbox to have an obituary tab, but maybe they should. It's not just a gaming thing. In Second Life, I had a neighbor, and one day she was chatting, decorating her place, making plans. The next day, gone. No message, no "hey guys, gotta go," nothing. And to this day, no one knows what happened to her. Her partner? Completely lost. And it's not rare. A long-time Second Life resident told me they had a friend who just vanished in 2021 after more than a decade of friendship. For a year, people waited, hoping they'd log in, but they never did. And that's the worst part, the waiting, the wondering. I remember back in the days of Plurk, we had a really tight-knit group. We posted daily, joked around, and did everything we could to keep our karma at 100, which, if you were on Plurk, you know was a big deal. One day, one of the regulars just stopped posting. It was strange, but at first, no one really thought much of it. Then, her husband reached out to one of her friends and told us she had been killed in a car crash. That was the first time I really stopped and thought, this can happen to any of us at any time. Another friend I met through Plurk was also in Second Life. She lived in Chicago, and when I visited, she gave me and my friend Steve a tour of the city. She had been a taxi driver and knew the history of every building, which made it such a special experience. Later, she and Steve stayed in touch, and one night, while they were out together, she collapsed. She passed away shortly after in the hospital. Her real-life family knew nothing about her digital life. In Second Life, she was a respected and well-loved DJ. She had built a name for herself, formed friendships, and created a space where people gathered regularly to enjoy music. To her family, that world didn't even exist. They had no idea of the impact she had on so many people. It was Steve who told them and explained that there was an entire community grieving her loss. People who had never met her in person, but who considered her a real friend. Rip Madame Maracas. In my Destiny 2 clan, we lost 2 members unexpectedly. Though I wasn't particularly close with them, I had played with both a few times. Their families contacted someone in the clan who then shared the news with all of us. Even if you don't know someone well, news like this still hits hard. Our party chat was noticeably quieter that day. How different digital spaces handle loss. This isn't just a gaming problem. This happens everywhere. Second Life, Discord, social media, forums. People disappear, and unless someone in their real life knows about their online world and actually cares to update it, their digital presence just lingers like a half-finished book no one will ever close. Some people, like Nguyen, have an actual plan. Being 72, he wrote it into his real-life will to notify his online friends if something happens to him. Now, at first glance, that might sound a bit intense, like, wow, this person really included their virtual world in estate planning. But if you've ever found yourself checking someone's profile over and over, hoping for a status update that never comes, you get it. That kind of uncertainty sticks with you. And when you've built real friendships online, it's not dramatic, it's just decent. I've told my kids to update my profiles if anything happens to me, because I'd rather people know than sit around wondering if I rage quit life permanently. But not everyone has someone to do that. A lot of people keep their online and offline lives completely separate. And if something happens to them, their family doesn't even know they had an entire second life, literally. And that's the real problem with digital loss. It's not just grief. It's grief with no closure. In real life, if someone passes, there's a funeral, a service, something to mark the loss. Online, sometimes the only sign that someone is gone is that they just never log in again, honoring those we've lost. In Second Life, memorial parks and tribute spaces exist where friends can gather to remember those who are no longer with us. Some create permanent exhibits or dedicate a part of their land in memory of a friend. In gaming, the response varies. Some communities hold tribute matches, complete a final in-game run in their honor, or even leave spaces open on leaderboards in memory of lost players. But in many cases, it's just a quiet absence that never fully goes away. You know, the thing about digital grief is that most people don't talk about it. It's like there's this unspoken rule that says, if you've never met someone in person, you're not supposed to grieve them the same way. But if you've ever lost an online friend, you know that's not true. Because grief doesn't care if you shook hands or shared a coffee. It only cares that you cared. And that's what makes it hard. Not just the loss itself, but the way people react to it. So, how do you deal with this kind of grief when the world doesn't really acknowledge it? How do you support a friend who's going through it? It's okay to grieve an online friend. I need to say this up front. If you're feeling grief over someone you've never met in person, That grief is valid. It's normal to feel shock. It doesn't feel real. Guilt. Why didn't I check in sooner? Confusion. Why does this hurt so much if I never met them in real life? Helplessness. Not knowing what happened makes it worse. And the hardest part? Closure is rare. Sometimes online, all we get is a name that never lights up again, a last seen status frozen in time, a message thread that suddenly ends mid-conversation. It's weird. It's quiet. It hurts. And it's absolutely real. So if you're feeling that loss, let yourself grieve. Talk about them if you can. Remember them. Do something to honor them, whether it's leaving a message on their profile, sharing a story about them, or just keeping their name alive in conversation. Because grief is not about how someone died. It's about how they lived and how they mattered to you. Now, what if you're on the other side of this? What if it's your friend who's grieving and you have no idea what to say? First off, you don't need to understand it to support them. You just need to be there. Acknowledge their loss. Don't brush it off like it's nothing. Saying, "I'm really sorry you lost them," can mean more than you think. Let them talk. They might need to tell stories about their friend, reminisce about late-night Discord calls, or vent about how unfair it feels. Just listen. Avoid saying, "But you never met them." That's not the point. The connection was real, and that's what matters. Help them find a way to honor their friend. Find a way to make that person's presence feel remembered, not erased. And if you're worried about them, check in. Let them know they're not grieving alone. If you're struggling with this kind of loss, you don't have to go through it alone. There are actually communities and resources out there that understand digital grief. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, and there's no timeline for it. The only thing that matters is that you let yourself feel it and that you don't go through it alone. At the end of the day, what makes a friendship real isn't proximity, it's connection. And when those friends are gone, whether they just disappeared or they're truly gone, the loss is real. But so is the love. So is the laughter you shared. So is everything they meant to you. Maybe we don't get the same kind of closure in digital spaces, but that doesn't mean we can't honor them. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it. If you've ever lost a digital friend, someone you laughed with, played with, confided in, or simply saw as part of your world, I invite you to share their story. Or, if words are hard, just leave their name, a message, a memory. Let this video be a place to honor your online friends in whatever way feels right to you. Whether you met them in a game, a forum, Second Life, Discord, wherever this space is for them, and for you. Because they mattered, and they still do.